If you've modeled driveways in the past, you may have found them to be one of the more challenging things to add to a Civil 3D corridor model. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you a way to add driveways using a simple pair of targets. Let me say up front that this workflow isn't intended to be the end-all way to create driveways. That being said, I do think it can be used to model many of them. In addition, I'm hoping what I show you here may give you some new ideas, allowing you to take this concept even further on your own. In this session, we'll start by reviewing a custom subassembly that I created to help simplify the modeling of driveways. Please note that this session represents part 1 of a 3-part series. As you can see, I've got the part open here in Subassembly Composer. Here on the Packet Settings tab, we can see this part is called Curb Gutter, Width, Driveway, and Walk. Let's take a quick tour of what we have. I'll start by saying that the intention of this part is to model the curb, the driveway, the boulevard, and the sidewalk. I started by creating the geometry for the curb and the subbase, and if you were to review the dimensions and the controls for these objects, you'll find they are virtually identical to the curb that comes stock in Civil 3D. Let's zoom in. I then created this driveway object, and I assigned some targets to this corner. This allows me to drive the geometry both horizontally and vertically. You can see I've got a target here called Driveway Horizontal. If I pull that out, it creates the driveway. If I jump to the Target Parameters tab, there's also a control here for the driveway vertical. Currently that's set to 1/2 foot. Let me knock that down to maybe 0.3, just to make that a little easier to select. I can pull this up and down. Let's pull it down a little bit further. So my intention is that when this part is first installed, that driveway will be the width of a sliver. It'll be like 0.01. So it's there, but technically it doesn't exist. That is until such time as it reaches a driveway apron. When it does, it will follow that target both horizontally and vertically, such that it meets up with the sidewalk. And then when it gets through the driveway, it'll move back into a collapsed state. Now in the driveways, I would also like to lower the curb. So I have created a vertical target for this corner. If we look down here, we can see that's called curb height, and that is set to 0.5 currently. Let me knock that down to 0.3, and I can grab the target here and pull this down. I suppose we could pull the driveway down as well. So when I enter the driveway area, I can push this down until such time as we are beyond the driveway, and then it can move back up. Notice there is a point here that is independent of the curb. By default, this point rides along the top back of curb until such time as the curb is lowered for the driveway. I created this independent point such that I could locate my sidewalk. Generally speaking, I went from this point a specified slope and distance to identify the inside edge of the walk. Let me back this up. And I'm going to change this to layout mode. Here you can see that driveway is collapsed. If I go to Input-Output Parameters, notice that I have a boulevard width parameter that controls the distance from the back of curb to the walk. I also have a boulevard slope. Currently that's 2%. I'll make it 6%. You can see the change on screen. Let me flip this back to roadway. So by making this independent, I could control the location of the sidewalk without having to worry about this dropping as the curb drops. If I pan this over, we can see that the sidewalk includes some horizontal targets, very similar to the stock sidewalk that comes in Civil 3D. Once the sidewalk was drawn, I then created a link from the sidewalk to my driveway. This means that as the driveway comes over to meet the sidewalk, I will have a nice boulevard link. It will then collapse to the sidewalk until we get past the driveway, and then it will come back again as the driveway collapses back on the curb. So, generally speaking, that's really all there is to this part. Now that we understand how this part was constructed, we're ready to jump over to Civil 3D and use it to model some driveways. And we'll do that in the next session. Would you like to explore other Autodesk infrastructure ideas and workflows? If so, please visit the Civil Immersion blog by scanning the QR code or by following the URL listed below.